I've been saying for years that there's going to be a terror attack on the United States, and well, here we are. Never mind what happened in Israel last year. Let's take a look at this. Humdinger. DHS identifies over 400 migrants brought to the U.S. by an ISIS affiliated human smuggling network. And who is ISIS affiliated with? Well, let's come back to that in a minute. Over 150 have been arrested, but the whereabouts of 50 remain unknown, officials say. ICE is looking to arrest them on immigration charges when they are found. Okay, so let's talk about math real quick here, by the way. Over 150, okay, and about 50, or over 50, that's still only about 200 of 400, guys. But hey, let's just move on. This even goes high as 300. Department of Homeland Security has identified over 400 migrants from Central Asia, Middle East, and elsewhere who crossed into the U.S. in the past 3 years as subjects of concern because they were brought by an ISIS-affiliated human smuggling network, 3 officials tell NBC News. Yeah, we're going to skip down to paragraph 3. One of the U.S. officials said people affiliated with ISIS are operating human smuggling in Central Asia and helping the people there leave their countries and travel to the West, where they are then smuggled into the U.S. It is not known whether human smuggling activity directly funds ISIS activity or whether ISIS members are making personal money through the human smuggling on the side. Let's be honest here. All right, they're members of ISIS. If they didn't have permission to do it, they would not be doing it. All right. Next paragraph talks about there's no proof that they're terrorists, but they're being brought in out of an abundance of caution. Yeah, that's bullshit. But anyway, now there's something else that was much more important. Hmm. In this case, it was the information that suggested a potential tie to ISIS because some of the individuals involved in smuggling migrants to the border that led us to want to take extra care, said a senior Biden administration official. And out of an abundance of caution, blah, 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 all the legalese. Homeland Security's Civil Rights Office regularly conducts internal investigations based on complaints filed by the public regarding the department policies or activities or actions taken by department personnel, according to its website. The office previously investigated the detention of Iranian Americans at the U.S.-Canadian border in 2020. Huh. Well, now. That was kind of interesting, wasn't it? Uh, OA Online, which I've never heard of this before. DPS, Department of Public Safety, that's Texas Rangers, apprehends dozens of illegal immigrants from special interest countries. Austin, over the last week, Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, troopers working Operation Lone Star, the state's mission to secure our southern border and deter, detect, and interdict criminal activity between the ports of entry, have apprehended two groups of illegal immigrants, many coming from countries of special interest, attempting to unlawfully enter the United States. All right. We're talking about several hundred now. We're talking about 400 just for this year. According to a DPS news release, on the morning of 30 September, DPS troopers working in Eagles Pass encountered a group of 230 illegal immigrants. Among them were 27. Okay, all right, so it's a little bit lower number, right? From countries of special interest, including Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Egypt, and India. Because these 27 individuals were attempting to circumvent lawful entry into the country to avoid detection and come from countries with extensive terrorist activity, all were turned over to federal government for processing and additional vetting. Oh, wow, that sounds a whole lot like that other story, the one about ISIS, which totally isn't in any way, shape, or form beholden to Iran, you know, that country. Good thing I'm doing this in unlisted mode. And to crush any hopes and dreams of the apologists for the Biden regime, this is Daily Mail. All right. Everybody keeps saying you got to trust the foreign. Fuck. It's ridiculous. Where did all this traffic suddenly come from? Ah. Mm. To crush the hopes and dreams of the leftist apologists, the satanic apologists, this story comes from Daily Mail. You got to trust the foreign news services. Well, okay. Exclusive. FEMA whistleblower details waste of taxpayer funds and staff awaiting in hotels during Hurricane Helen. A little too. God damn it. There we go. The federal government's disaster response agency has been painfully slow to deploy first responders to help Hurricane Helen victims and making things worse on the ground, multiple whistleblowers have alleged. Bombshell allegations of mismanagement at Federal Emergency Management Agency come just days after the agency took a beating for its boss, Alejandro Mayorkas, admitting it will not be able to foot the bill for the historic hurricane season. In a letter to whistleblower, in a letter from a whistleblower to Representative Matt Getz, details how the department has wasted and misappropriated funds in the wake of Helen and is now exacerbating the emergency. Okay, pause on that for a second. The way the federal budget works, or any state budget really, or government budget really, X dollars are appropriated to Y purpose, whatever those dollars and purpose is. If FEMA was given, let's say, $1 million for housing migrants, they have to spend that money on housing migrants. Does money get misappropriated all the damn time? I was standing right there when money, as a Coast Guardsman, I was standing right there when money was misappropriated from ordering line to ordering something else, office supplies or some shit like that. Can't even remember now. Papa Carey has a great story about misappropriating about $20,000 or so dollars, or maybe it was $10,000. This is in 1970s money, where he had to burn through the money. That was his orders. Spend $10,000 on office supplies or this or that, even though he actually said something out loud to the effect of, we've been wanting an incubator for a long time. An incubator is a device for growing viral samples. So you can test the sample to see what somebody has, so you can treat it. All right. Instead, he had to spend it on office supplies, which is not what that money was actually earmarked for originally. The whistleblower saying that this money has been misappropriated, well, that might be true. But they're supposed to spend it in a specific way. However, spending this money on housing migrants, whether they're legal or otherwise, is not FEMA's job. FEMA's job is to clean up disasters after they've happened, or to prevent them from happening to begin with. Now, there's nothing they could have done to have stopped Hurricane Helen. All right. And please put your weirdo weather control conspiracy fantasies away for a little while. The idea that they would have created this disaster on purpose just doesn't follow. You're not going to convince me with what we've seen so far. Moving on past that, they should be cleaning up the disaster, and instead, according to some sources, the White House took money from FEMA and put it towards housing migrants. Whoops. That's not something you're supposed to do under any circumstances. Now, FEMA's going to be walking away from this matter with a very black eye, especially if the stories about them confiscating supplies and arresting people for trying to respond to it are true. That was a level of fuck up they didn't even pull at Katrina, which was supposed to be the event that forced FEMA to get their shit in one sock. You know, it's really, really bad when only literally one agency walked away from all of that without a black eye. And FEMA just kept getting pounded and pounded and pounded. There's literally a song about it. Help is on the way. I forgot who it's by. And the whole song is about how FEMA fucking threw everything away and fucked it up completely. But you know what? Let's move on past that for a moment. Let's focus on what is going on here and now. The White House took the money away from FEMA, so they can't do their job. FEMA, in turn, is reportedly confiscating supplies that people are trying to deliver to the disaster zone and arresting people for trying to respond to the disaster zone. They're not in your chain of command, and those supplies do not belong to you. They never did. Now, I've got a pretty strong suspicion that some of these supplies are being distributed along certain communal lines. Christian chapel feeding the members of their congregation first, and possibly only. I get that. I get you're upset about that. Here's the problem. I don't care. That wasn't your supplies to confiscate any more than it was your chain of command that these people were flying under. All right. There are people who are talking about flying treetop level to avoid radar. That's a combat mission. And people are being forced to do that because FEMA is intercepting them and forcing them to return to their airports and arresting them. So let's start laying blames where they actually do belong. Stop laying it just everywhere because it happens to be convenient in the moment. I get it. You're mad. You should be mad. All right. You should be mad at FEMA for fucking up their job for the second time in a row. You should be furious for the White House taking FEMA funds and spending it on people who aren't even supposed to be here. And not on people who are supposed to be here and who put that money in and are now being left to die. People are dying in the wake of Helen now not because they're sick and injured. It's because they're literally freezing to death overnight. They're drowning while they wait to be picked up. This is inexcusable, especially since we now know that about 400 this year were from regions of grave concern. I've been talking about this mass shooting for just over 10 years now. And here's the White House literally housing these people because what? I would love to hear the logic that they're going to give for giving an Iranian migrants housing while they leave Americans to drown. This is an interesting story I got to hear. I actually feel bad for the White House press secretary right now because she's going to have to really really strain herself trying to think of a story that doesn't sound like complete and utter bullshit to explain this. Jean, maybe you should just resign and spare yourself any further humiliation. You know, let Joe and Kamala do their own press conferences. It's as simple as that, lady. You got to walk away from this because you're being made into the clown. All right, keep calm. Mandatory carry on. And remember, Joe Biden just let 400 potential mass shooters into the country. He knows at least 10% of them will be. Mandatory carry on.